What's going on, everyone? It's Justin here, and today I've got a video of my modern gaming PC for 2021. So we're going to walk through some of the parts that I went with, the build process, and for those who don't know, I'm primarily a Mac user who uses it for video production. I do game occasionally, but relatively casually, and haven't really been a gaming PC user in the past couple years. So one of the projects, and the reason why we're building this computer, is for a Formula One simulator that I've been wanting to work on for quite a while. We've been planning it, waiting for all the parts to come out in stock, the steering wheel, seat, and like monitor and all that kind of stuff. But just as a disclaimer, I actually haven't put together a gaming PC on my own before. This is my first time. The only other time that we did a gaming PC was with Austin Evans, who's of course an expert that I'm sure all of you know, and he did a lot of the work and ensured that I didn't mess anything up. So this time I chose the parts on my own. The CPU that I went with is an Intel. The motherboard that I went with is the Z490E from the Asus ROG line, and this is relatively on the top end. You have the CPU for Intel, of course. There's also 4 RAM slots that support up to 128 gigs. You also have all of your PCIe, of course, and it also has Wi-Fi 6. And so overall, this is one that has a lot of room for expandability in the future if we need more RAM for production and stuff. But generally, it is on the top end. And I know ROG and the Asus line is really, really good. In terms of the GPU, that is kind of the star of the show that has been very hard to find. This is the MSI Ventus, the 3080 from NVIDIA, of course, the RTX line that has been super hard to find in stock. I did think of going with a 3070 just because for F1, I'm not gonna need anything crazy in terms of GPU power, but I figured for video editing as well, I think the 3080 will give us a little bit of room, and it has 10 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory. If you guys would like to win one of the items in this video, just make sure you subscribe to the channel, drop a like on this video, and also leave a comment down below with your Instagram username, and follow me over on Instagram at justin.tse, and I'll be announcing a winner in the comments section when this video hits 3,000 likes. As always, all the products are gonna be linked down below, and if you guys are excited for the F1 simulator setup, make sure you drop a like and subscribe to the channel. And also stay tuned, because I know this Formula One simulator setup is gonna be a video that is going to look super cool, especially with the monitor that we have picked, which is the G9 from Samsung, a 49-inch curved monitor with a 1000 R radius, meaning that it is curved to the peripheral vision of the human eye. And for racing, and especially like in that cockpit and the steering wheel, it is just going to give a very authentic experience from what I hope. So the first thing I want to do is just take out the case and see where everything is going to be housed in, and that is the NZXT H510 Elite mid-tower ATX case. And I did ask quite a few friends, like, which one is the best computer case for what I'm going to need. And originally I really want to do like a mini ITX setup, just like a slim tower that looks a bit like an Xbox Series X. But I heard it was a little bit harder, and because I was going with the 3080 GPU and an 850 watt power supply, it was going to be a little bit tough to fit everything in and build it as a first-time gaming PC builder. So this right here has a tempered glass finish on the front and side, so the fan and the RGBs and everything can be seen right through, as well as all of your parts. So hopefully my cable management is like not too bad, but I feel like it is a really good size. It's right in the middle, being a mid-sized tower. There's also USB Type-C right there, your power, USB 3, and a 3.5mm jack. And on the back, you have all of the access. Nothing really to talk about that. So let's go ahead and prep the motherboard and get the CPU and everything installed, the RAM, and we'll go from there. So from what I remember last time with Austin, the first thing that we did is prepared the motherboard, had all the pieces installed to that, and then put it in the case before adding the GPU and all that sort of stuff. I know some people prepared the PSU first, but in this case, we're gonna take a look at some of the parts that are gonna be going on the motherboard. You have the Western Digital Black SSD. It's the NVMe with 1 terabyte of storage. For some people that might not be enough, but in my case, I really just need to store a couple games from Steam on it, so I don't need a ton of storage, and you can always add external, or you can add some more because the case does have quite a bit of space for that. In terms of RAM, we went with the Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro. This seems to be a very popular option, and RGB wasn't that much more money. So for starters, I went with 32 gigs of RAM, and I also think that is more than what we're going to need. The motherboard itself can support up to 128 gigs. And for like video editing, I always have about like 128, 196, or even 256 on one of my computers. But for this gaming PC, we really don't need anything more than about 32. So yeah, that is the RGB setup, and these two will slot into the motherboard as well. When it comes to the CPU, I know there's like a whole debate of like AMD and Intel. There's like the production side, there's the gaming side, and so for my purpose, I believe that the i9 is a good fit. It is the 10900K, the K meaning it has the built-in graphics as well, the integrated graphics. So if you need that, that's great, but if you don't, the 10900 is also an option standalone. But yeah, this right here is a CPU that is 8 cores, so it's super powerful. It's at the top of Intel's lineup at the moment. So let's go ahead and take a look at the motherboard. So ASUS is obviously a very well-known name in the motherboard space with the ROG line. The Z490 Strix has the ability to add up to 4 RAM sticks. You can also have like multiple SSDs, of course, and it is made for the Intel, being the CPU that we went with. So now we're gonna go ahead and unbox the GPU, which is the RTX 3080, a card that has been extremely hard to find, and admittingly, I had to pay resale price for it. So here we have it, and the one that I've got is the MSI Ventus. So for anyone building their first gaming PC, one thing to keep an eye out for is which model you buy. Whether it's the 3-fan setup right here, which is all singular, or you grab a hybrid model. And one mistake that I personally made was that I grabbed the EVGA hybrid variant, and that had an external radiator and fan setup. So before we move on to the next part of the video and this PC build, I want to give a huge thanks to the sponsor of this video, CCleaner, which is a cleaning and optimization tool for PC, Mac, and also Android. They've been around since 2004, and I remember when I was using a Windows computer when I first started YouTube, I had CCleaner, and now obviously it's many years since, and they're still going strong. And with my brand new gaming PC build, it is a good program to have to ensure that it is always well maintained and kept at its best shape. What CCleaner does is ensure that your computer runs cleaner, faster, and also safer. So one of the key features is a CCleaner health check, and this is a 4-in-1 tool that boosts privacy by deleting browsing and tracking data, space by unnecessary junk files, speed by disabling programs that you don't really need on startup, and also security by updating outdated apps to close security holes. It's all really easy to use and it's relatively automated, but if you're really into like the tech side, there's also a custom mode where you can set your own things that you would like the computer to scan and optimize. So obviously now that I have this computer fully set up, I want to make sure that it is running in best shape for as long as possible. And as I use it a bit more, there's going to be more junk files and like security things that have to be updated. So it's nice to have this application, and I also run something similar on my Mac that also ensures it is always running in great shape as my daily computer. If you guys would like to check out CCleaner for yourself, they have a free version, and if you'd like to upgrade to the professional version, just use the coupon code JUSTIN25 for a discount. Typically in a full tower case, you should have no problem, but because I had a mid-tower ATX size case, I was also using the Kraken X63 by NZXT, and because that mounts on the front, there is really nowhere else to mount the external radiator, which meant I had to trade that for the MSI Ventus, so this should fit no problem in a mid-tower case. So let's go ahead and unbox it here. Some paperwork. And here's kind of the riser bracket in case it needs to hang off a little bit in the case. And there is the GPU itself. And you can probably see it is quite large. So this one here has like a nice matte black finish, a bit of a brush texture. It has a 3-fan setup and your connectors on the bottom. And on the back, you have your HDMI and your 3 display ports. So the monitor that we're gonna be using this computer with is the G9 from Samsung, the Odyssey variant. So that is going to be great for gaming, and specifically Formula 1, I think it's gonna be a lot of fun, but the 3080, I believe, is gonna be more than enough power for this setup. And we probably could have gotten away with a 3070, but because I might wanna use this for video editing as well, I figured that the 3080 would be a good choice to move up to. So now that we have the motherboard in the computer and it's all been secured and tipped over, the next part is to take a look at the power supply unit and also our liquid cooler for the CPU. So this right here is the Kraken X63 by NZXT, and it is a liquid cooler with RGB lights. It looks really good, and you can also connect it with other RGB accessories from their lineup. And in conjunction with the case, I think the visual effects of the computer are going to be nice, especially when they're customized through the system. So let's just actually open up the Kraken first. So here we have the unit itself. It does have a bit of thermal paste on it. If you guys remember in the last video that I built a PC, I put a little bit too much thermal paste. So in this case, it's already there, which is nice. And here is the rest of the system, which has the heatsink fan there you go. So we're gonna go ahead and connect this to the computer, and otherwise there are also a few different accessories such as the fan and other mounting units as well. So that is the kind of liquid cooler and what is included in that side of the packaging. So the last thing that we have to unbox before we get started with the computer is the power supply unit. And this one right here is the C850 from NZXT. The 3080 card does need quite a bit of power, but 850 is going to be more than enough for the build that we have. So now that we have everything organized, it is time to get started, and we've used the packaging as a bit of a platform as well as a protective film. That is something that Austin showed me, and I think the most important thing is just to locate where everything is. The instruction manual shows you each port and which one to use first, as well as the RAM configurations. So as a first time computer builder, I went ahead and took a look at it, and usually the first step, at least what I did, is to put the CPU in first. You don't want to go ahead and expose the CPU until it is time to actually put it in, because the pins can be delicate, but we have it right here, and just go ahead and line it up and make sure you have it in the right orientation before you actually set it down, because you don't want to bend or break any of these pins. You then go ahead and latch it back in. It is all pretty straightforward and very simple, so that part of the process is done. The next step is go ahead and configure the RAM, and the one that I have here is 32 gigs of the Vengeance Pro RGB, and I'm excited to go ahead and configure the lighting settings in conjunction with the NZXT system. So this RAM is relatively inexpensive for an RGB set. It seems to be like a very popular option as well, and what I was recommended to, and if I want to expand it in the future we can, but 32 gigs for Formula 1 Simulator is going to be more than enough. So you can take a look at the RAM configurations over on the instruction manual. It will tell you whether to use the port 2 or 4 or the 1 and 3. And yeah, just go ahead and follow that. Snap the RAM pieces in. Again, you just really want to take your time with the steps and make sure that you're not like forcing anything in the wrong way. So the next step for me is actually putting the NVMe SSD, and I actually almost put it in the wrong spot the first time. There's an NVMe slot on the outside, and there is also one that is underneath the cover, and the one you're actually supposed to use as a primary one is underneath the cover. After everything's been put in place, it is now time to go ahead and attach the motherboard to the case itself, and I found it easier just to set it flat on the table and just find the connecting points. I believe there is 9 screws in this situation, and after everything has been set in place, you can then move forward and add the CPU cooler. All these products come with great instructions, and it actually tells you which bracket to use, whether you're in an AMD or an Intel CPU setup. This next step right here is actually removing the fans that are included with the case and putting it into the radiator that is included with the CPU cooler. That way we do have the RGB effect, and at first this was a little bit confusing, but it all sort of made sense pretty quickly, and once we shifted over the fans and attached it, it all seemed to go into place quite nicely. The CPU liquid cooler already had some thermal paste on it, so we didn't have to add anything new. Just be very careful not to touch it and try to line it up the very first time. Once again, use the bracket that was included, screwed it in, and this part of the setup was done. The whole motherboard process was relatively simple. As someone who does know about computers to a degree, I felt like the RAM, the CPU, the memory, and on like the storage, all that kind of stuff was relatively straightforward. I knew where it was supposed to go for the most part, and mounting it in for the first time can take a little bit of time, but if you follow the instructions carefully and take your time, it does all sort of make sense. The hardest part is actually trying to figure out which cable goes into what if you're not as familiar, and just like what goes from the PSU, and organizing the cables in general is one area that I needed quite a bit of help with. I watched some tutorials over on YouTube, and a lot of people seem to plug in the cables into the PSU first, and then from there decide where to route everything. So we sent the cables through the side, and I did have some help kind of organizing it a bit afterwards, but for now, it doesn't really matter what the other side looks like because there's going to be a case over it, but I know a lot of people do like to organize their cables even on the non-visible side. So after everything's been mounted in, the last step is to go ahead and put in the GPU, and in this case that is the 3080 with the tri-fan setup, and we leave this last because it is the largest piece inside the computer, and I connect it to the port, plug in the wires, and that is pretty much it for that part. I did originally have a 3070 unit, but I decided to just go ahead and sell it because I got it at a retail price and just bump it up to the 3080 in case I want to do a little bit more than just play one game on it. So overall, being the centerpiece of this setup, I'm really excited to check this out, and hopefully it becomes more widely available soon. Once your computer is all ready to go and you've turned it on and ensured that the BIOS was able to boot up and all of the things are working properly, you install Windows, then you can go ahead and take off the plastic on the case, and it was super satisfying. And with the LED shining through, that is one of my favorite features, and I think this case is one of the most popular ones on the market, and for very good reason. So as you can see, I'm plugging it in and turning it on for the first time, and you have to download some of the software pieces for the NZXT case, as well as any drivers for any specific parts that you have in the computer. There's also the separate software for the Corsair system, so all the RGBs can be configured exactly the way you like, and of course there's a whole bunch of fine-tuning, and that is kind of the beauty of the custom PC industry. So there you have it. Here's a look at my custom gaming PC after it is all said and done, and I have to say I'm really happy with it, and just based on the initial tests of the F1 game and how it performs from a graphics and frame rate standpoint, I'm super excited to get started. And the monitor actually just arrived yesterday, so I'm going to start gaming on that, but I've also been told to try doing some video editing or color grading on this because it is going to be super fast. I've been a Mac user for many years now, and the biggest thing about the Mac is that the money that you spend is not extended nearly as far as you would get on a custom gaming PC, especially from a pure performance standpoint, and there's just no disputing that. So even though I am a Mac user due to software and just like general ecosystem that I'm very used to and enjoy, I'm always open-minded to trying things out that can provide better solution for specific needs. So I feel like this is a good experiment, and I don't plan to build many gaming PCs, but this one was just a super fun project and one that I've been wanting to do for quite a while. So now we're here and I've finished my gaming PC build for 2021, and honestly it was a process that started out very smooth, and then there's a couple things here and there that I definitely learned because it was the first time building one completely on my own. So some of the things is make sure you get the right graphics card that is in the same orientation that fits in the case that you've chosen. NZXT does make a larger case, including the 710, but in my case, I wanted it to just be a little bit smaller, and I feel like this is like a good medium that has all the parts that I need in it at the same time. Just to summarize, the CPU is the 10900K from Intel, and I chose this many months ago. I probably need to use it for a little bit of video production as well as like a secondary machine or for color grading, and primarily use it for gaming, playing Formula 1 and the simulator video that you guys are hopefully as excited as I am for. The 3080 is powering the entire system, which was still very hard to find. The 510 case from NZXT is one that I have had my eye on for quite a while. I think it just looks so clean and minimal. The glass looks great, and the motherboard is the ROG Strix Z490E from ASUS, and that was able to suit all the needs and then some, because 32 gigs of RAM is what I chose to install, and I don't think I'm gonna need any more than that. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, subscribe to the channel for more tech videos. I don't plan to build a PC very often, but I hope you guys at least enjoyed this kind of video for a change, and I'll see you all in the next one.